Hi everyone, this is Trish the Beekeeper. I am streaming from my computer so that you can see my YouTube presentation. So, I'm wearing my veil to remind you, wear your veil. When you are just checking on the bees, just walking back there, or when you're lifting the lid to look at the sugar syrup that you're feeding the bees, just wear your veil. All right, but we're not here to see me lecture. We're here for a lesson about beekeeping. Slideshow, and you're not a beekeeper yet. You're really going to want to hear this from the beginning. So, it's good to take notes about what day you did things. Starting at the beginning, the first day you get your bees. Yeah, you're going to carry your package bees in the car. There's always a couple of bees on the outside of the package that came from somewhere. Or there's often a couple of bees. They'll tend to stay with the package. Sometimes they'll fly towards a window. Just wear your veil. Don't let the package get super cold or hot. Don't leave them in the sun. It's really good to give them a spritz of water, or if you just have a water bottle, you forgot a spritz bottle, pour like 2 tablespoons on a corner of the screen. You'll see them come and lick it up because package bees are often very thirsty. They can get dehydrated. And you can just put them in the shotgun like seat on the floor, or buckle them in as long as the sun isn't going to shine on them, and listen to them buzz. It's a little weird, but it's the bees are they're there for the ride. Oh, installing your package bees, man. It's not as bad as you think. You got to realize these are all young bees. Many of them were not even foragers yet, and so they're not tough cookies yet. And you need to remember that the bees are not in defensive mode. They are interpreting this as some sort of tragedy has happened to the hive, but the combs are there. The foragers would have to reorient. Even if a tree was like, the entrance is up 10 feet and then the tree like falls sideways. The foragers have to completely reorient. So the bees are sort of in confusion mode. They're not in defensive mode. They're not defending that package as though it's their hive. So, and it really is one of the easiest things you're going to do this year. It helps a lot to have a sugar syrup spritz bottle ready. Here's a video, a link you can go to a video. Oh, I don't think this will work as a link if you click on it. Maybe it will. But you can find Ohio State Beekeepers, find the package bee installation chapter, and check it out. So you can take the package of bees and, before we look at that, like how are you going to manipulate things? You're going to take out like at least 5 of the frames, or take out all but the outer frames. And you can actually just put the package inside the hive. And then take out your sugar syrup jar. This is a little freaky because now the bees can move freely. They're going to be most interested in the queen. Very few of them will fly out, but some might fly out towards you. So it's nice maybe to have a shirt on where the collar goes up underneath the veil, or if you're wearing a jacket, make sure the sleeves are tight so there's no nooks for any curious or confused bees to crawl under your sleeves, your shirt sleeve or your veil sleeve. The bees are confused. They're not defensive, but if they get underneath your shirt sleeve, it's going to be a bad day for everybody. So you're going to need to take out the sugar syrup can. You're going to need to take the queen and carefully lift her out and put her on a frame. So put her container on a frame. And there's videos of this, just so you're mentally prepared. There's going to be bees on the queen, hopefully. Just gently and slowly move your hands where they need to be, and the bees will move. They'll kind of treat you like, oh, there's a fat, kind of warm bee moving me aside. Okay, I'll move. And you are going to want the queen to be attached to what will be frame 4. So there's a lot of techniques for getting the bees out of the package. Flipping it over and dumping is quite effective. If you spritz the bees with sugar syrup, like through the hole, then they'll tend to not fly as much. When they do fly, they're flying up, a few of them, not the whole thing, not all 10,000 bees, but like maybe 100 bees might fly up, and they're just confused. They will land, they'll smell the queen, the other bees will call them over with their fanning their come hither pheromone, and it's a really strange time for the hive. You'll never see them in this kind of confused state again. They'll be orderly the next time you see them. So before you are taking apart your package, look at the package. How deep is the dead bee layer? The deeper it is, the more stress the bees are under. And that's important to understand when you think about what to expect from the bees. Package bee installations can result in a hive that fails. So, being realistic about that, being prepared for it, and looking for trouble at week 1 and week 2 is really an important perspective to have. And when you're taking the queen cage out, how are the bees reacting to her? You want some bees on that cage. You don't want them ignoring it. If they're ignoring it, odds are very good she's a virgin queen. She may or may not be young enough to get out and get mated. Even if she is young enough, she needs to be less than 21 days since she's emerged from her queen cell. Even if she is young enough, you may not get a weather break, especially like May 1st. A lot of people are getting their bees this year, May 1st, 2020. Yeah, well, it might be rainy for 7 days right after she arrives and the bees arrive. So, she may not be able to get out and fly. If you have so many bees on there, they're creating heat, and you can't see the queen, well, that queen is toast. They're trying to heat her to death, and they've probably gotten pretty far along on that goal. And this means there's another queen in there they're defending. So it's mixed good news. Odds are good you have another queen in there. She might also be a virgin, but the bees think they have a queen. So hopefully they will. And you'll know what to look for because you will have listened to this webinar and looked at my first inspections webinar, class, presentation, whatever. And that will help you know what you're looking for and what is good to see and what is a source of concern. Okay, this is where you got to take notes. You expect to see about a frame drawn out in a week. It's not going to draw, the bees won't draw out a perfect sync. They're going to draw out part of one frame, part of another frame. In total, it'll be one whole frame drawn out. The queen should be out, and you're going to take the queen cage out at the 1 week point or the 10-day point. Somewhere in there, depending if you have a good break in the weather on day 7, go for it. If there isn't a break in the weather until day 10, okay, that's fine. Keep feeding them as much sugar syrup as they'll take. Expect to feed a quart a day, a gallon twice a week. There's a number of ways to do this. I used a hole saw to make holes in my inner cover, and I just put sugar syrup. I put mason jars directly on those holes. You can get the half-gallon buckets. Put 2 of those in there, up on a little shim. There's a lot of ways to do that, but expect to feed a gallon twice a week of sugar syrup. The queen should be laying soon after she's out of the queen cage. That might have been day 3 or 4. So what's that going to look like? Well, they will just be drawing out the comb. So some of the comb will be kind of shallowly drawn out on the frame. And as you get closer to the center, it'll be deeper. This is actually capped honey. So this might, I would not expect to see capped honey from a new hive that was drawing out comb, because that honey is going to be, or the nectar that the fake nectar that you're providing is going to be consumed almost as fast as it's going to be taken in. So, and this is a drone. This guy here in the middle, he's a drone. You're not going to see that with your package bees. Okay. Part of the frame will be covered with comb, and it'll tend to be the center frame. So that's something you can look for. So when you look in, you'll see the center 5 frames are the ones covered with bees. So I go through in my first inspections video about how to go into the hive. You don't want to pull out the center frame. You want to pull out one towards the edge. And the center frames are going to be where the action is, where the brood is going to be. So this is an example of a piece of comb. This is actually when I used to have top bar hives. But just picture that there's a frame, that there's foundation like as a backdrop here. So the foundation, actually, it's going to be drawn out kind of in a circular shape, or an arced shape at first. And this shiny here is sugar syrup or nectar. No brood here. They don't put sugar syrup on top of eggs or larvae. Okay. So you don't want to see frames that only have this. But we'll look at some frames in a minute, I think. Or in my first inspections video. It'll be what the brood looks like. I think it's in this one too. Okay, it's good when you get your package bees. Day 0 is your install. Day 10, you really should see some eggs. You should definitely see some comb drawn out. At least a frame drawn out here. These eggs will just be starting to be capped by day 22. That's when the eggs are 12 days old. Or you will not have had any eggs at all up until this point, and then the bees start to become laying worker bees because there wasn't a queen in there, and then you will see eggs starting here, but they will only turn into drone brood, which is bad. Here we go. This is a picture of comb with eggs. And the queen can lay in comb that's only like half height. The cells are only half drawn out. Like, girls, gotta get to work here. I'm just gonna put the eggs here for now, though. And then they will draw it out by the time, to its full height by the time the eggs have turned into these larvae. So this is like the caterpillar stage. These larvae don't go anywhere. They sit in their cell, get fed the perfect food so they don't even have to poop. It's so perfectly balanced for what they need for growing. There's no waste left over until like there's a little tiny bit right when they're weaving their chrysalis. And notice how this is milky. So nectar, which is over here in this picture, is shiny. It's not milky. When it's shiny and milky, there's a little tiny, well, sometimes the very first larvae that's being fed is as long as an egg. An egg is as long as this toe here on a bee. That's pretty tiny. You might not see the larvae, but you'll see the milky. So if you just see milky when you are looking at a frame, then that's good. That would be towards the center of the hive, bookended by frames with nectar and pollen. Well, it's fake nectar, sugar syrup, possibly, mainly. Now, these, and I gotta say, these are baby bees. They're ugly. I don't find them cute. Fortunately, the adults are much more appealing to me. So, these larvae get capped because then this is the chrysalis stage over here, akin to the chrysalis stage for a butterfly. And in here, the worm will turn into a fully developed bee. It'll take 3 weeks for the bee to go egg to emerged from the capped brood. And this is where taking notes helps a lot because, so if you installed on the 1st of May, then 10 days later, by the 8th or by the 10th of May, you expect to see eggs and definitely some comb drawn out. We'll talk about if in a minute. And you expect, the queen should be laying close to when she was let out of the cage, typically day 3 or 4. And then by day 22, this is where by the 23rd of May, you'll see a little bit of cat brood, or you'll be in trouble because they're becoming a laying worker. So this is really important to know because if you hit day 23, you haven't seen any eggs yet, then the hive does not have a functional queen. So unless the weather has been terrible and you were not feeding them, then it may be the queen is fine and they're just waiting for the temperatures to warm up so they can actually draw out comb. Okay, but you really want to see that queen laying at 8 to 12 days. And if you can't see eggs, remember you're looking for milky larvae, milky fluid, the royal jelly being fed to the larvae. You only have 10 days, 8 to 12 days post-install. You only have 10 days until you're in the danger zone where they start becoming a laying worker. At 20 days post-install, which is the second inspection, about 10 days after your first one, you should see your first cat brood. It may not be a lot. It may just be like a palm area of cat brood. You really should see that. And if you're just seeing eggs at this point, that could be a bad sign. And you really don't want to see queen cells at the 4 to 6 week point. That means they're superseding their queen. So that we'll cover that in a separate video about what steps you're going to go through there. So just, you need to understand package bees. They're not just being shipped from point A to point B. First, they're shaken out of their hives. There's like this whole funnel and maybe a bee vacuum. And they have to, you know, a truck holds something like 400 packages, I think. And when the first one's loaded, it's going to take a while to get the other 399 on there. It might be hot out. It might be really cold out. To that, got to be done. And then they're trucked cross country. Sometimes there's issues with going from the country of California to the rest of the country. Sometimes people are really not considering there's livestock that's perishable in a vehicle, and they're just being all officious. Well, this can be really hard on the bees. If you see more than like a layer, is, you know, just a coating of bees on the bottom, if it's more like 2 or 3 bees deep layer, they went through a lot, and there's a greater chance that that hive may not succeed. If they do not show any interest in the queen cage, this is not a good sign. She may be a virgin queen. She may have become damaged. Odds are better that you're going to see trouble. Okay. Oh, we are going to talk a little bit about if there's a problem. Okay. They're not interested in drawing comb. They have no motivation. Queen doesn't need to lay any eggs. So if you see comb, there may not be any eggs even after 2 or 3 frames. And you don't see eggs until after day 21, even when it was good weather. Fixing it. Well, this is something about bees. You can start with a package of bees that has no queen, that's gone laying worker, and you can turn that hive around. If you got 2 hives, the other hive is doing well, and you can see the difference. Take a frame of eggs and larvae. You don't want cat brood. You want eggs and larvae from the other hive and put it in the troubled one. This will fix everything. You might have to do that actually 10 days later. You want to see a queen cell on that frame of eggs and larvae. If you don't see a queen cell with the first one, put it in another one. Don't see a queen cell, that would be day 20 after you realize there's a problem. Day 10, you put in a frame with eggs and larvae. No queen cell at day 20, you put in another frame. Oh, so then day 30, you should either see a queen cell or eggs, because you had a queen who was coming along and you just couldn't tell. So frame of eggs and larvae, sometimes space 2 installations of a frame of eggs and larvae, spaced 7 to 10 days apart, fixes everything. Only have 1 hive. Someone who knows how to graft can scoop some of their larvae, put it in a fake queen cell, give it to you, and you can put it in your hive. And the bees can use this sometimes to save themselves. You cannot get a frame, or you should not get a frame of eggs from anyone other than the person who supplied you with bees, because you don't know if you are introducing a bee disease, a brood disease, to your hive. If you get frames from other people, it's better not to do that. Now, if you hit 3 weeks, 4 weeks, no brood, buying a queen and introducing her is often not going to succeed. There are ways to do it. You can take a mesh queen cage, put her inside of that, and that prevents the other bees from getting to her and killing her, and allows her to lay eggs. Aside from seriously draconian efforts than that, it's really hard to get the bees to accept a queen after 21 days without brood. You're better off with 2 rounds of queen cells, like put in a queen cell, 7 days later, they ate that one, put it in another queen cell, wait until they turn it into a queen, they start to draw it out. Then you could introduce a purchased queen when they think they need to draw out a queen cell. Okay, let's review what a functional hive looks like. So the bees are drawing out comb. They're motivated. Remember, quart a day. So if it's going to be 40 degrees out, if you give them 1 warm quart, they can probably suck it down before it chills too much. If you give them a half gallon, they can probably suck down a quart before it chills too much. If it's, highs in the 60s, you can give them a half gallon at a time and they'll be able to suck it all down. They're going to tend to draw out from the center of the hive and more or less from the center of the frame, or maybe from the top. And the queen lays at the center of the hive and from the center of the frame out. Oh, I'm repeating myself. Oh well, we're reviewing. And this is what you're going to see in a functional hive. Brood of all stages: eggs, larvae, and capped brood. And larvae, again, is going to be milky. Even if you can't see the little tiny larvae, when it's eggs, there's nothing in there. They do not put a little bit of sugar syrup or royal jelly in there for the eggs to snack on. No. It's bone dry. It's not until the eggs emerge that they start to put in the royal jelly, and that's milky, and the nectar is clear. So capped brood is eventually what your hive is going to be producing. You're going to have like up to 5 of these in your strong hive. Remember, one of these frames will become 2 frames covered with bees. And this is what it's all about. Watching them collect pollen, watching what flowers they like to visit. This is just so satisfying. Oh, and here's a picture of a queen. I thought I would toss it in. And this is neat. This right over here is pollen. And this is a different kind of pollen that's been shoved in there. I know everything is like orange. It is an iPhone. It is not the best picture conditions, but the queen is still lovely. That's my paint job. Not the best, but it worked. All right, you're a beekeeper now. Installing and watching over your package. Actually, the installing you'll find is not the hardest thing you'll do. Probably opening the hive the first time after you installed. That, for me, I actually caught a swarm for my first beekeeping experience. And opening the hive, I actually had to open it like hours later because I had shaken the swarm in and then quickly put the inner cover on and then like almost ran away. And then I called someone and they said, actually it was Dave Patterson, and he said, oh, you got to have all the frames in there. So I had to go back and put the frames in. There was some adrenaline pumping. But you'll find if you don't act like a bee, they're very calm about their hive being interrupted. Thanks for watching. I have a website, chickabuzz.com, with more information about bees. If you leave a comment, I probably will see it and write stuff. And my email's on the club website. If you are not in a bee club, then really give it a try. If you go to a bee club meeting, you're like, whoa, these guys are emphasizing stuff about beekeeping that I'm not interested in, try another bee club, like the next county over. And you might find that you click better there, or just give it a few meetings and be patient. Look for other people who have frowny faces, seek them out and see why they're frowning. And it can be, other beekeepers can be a great resource. Okay, so this is a live stream, so you get to see how I pull out of this. All right, so I have to click end